everybody. Today I thought I would share some fun stories, I guess, or start a new fun story with y'all. This is going to be the first episode of mine and Shannon's live D&D campaign. So I am the dungeon master for the group, and so I will be regaling you with the stories of the D&D group and the party, and of course the stories and shenanigans that follow about them. Just a few things to go over quickly. This campaign is actually taking place on Pathfinder 2nd edition, and the campaign itself is called Rise of the Rune Lords. Now, it does have some fun homebrew stuff, and most of the people in the group are fairly new to D&D, so I do take a lot of liberties with the rules and play it kind of fast and kind of loose, because I believe that D&D should be fun overall. Fun above all. So, with that out of the way, I guess the only other thing I would like to say is I do railroad the campaign a little bit, but again, the player's kind of new, so I like to generally guide them in the, just a gentle nudge, if you will, in the direction they should be heading. So, yeah, anyways, without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and get started. So this is Rise of the Rune Lords, Chapter 1. The party consists of a elf druid named Wynne, who is Shannon's character, who is a animal-based druid with a beautiful panther named Suchet, and a tiny little woodland creature named Bloom, who likes to run amok and cause problems. A elven rogue named Alora, who is beautiful even by her own people's standards, and is a sly hustler more so than just a outright thief. A stalwart and smug cleric that likes to believe he is above all others, named Teshrin, and a barbarian named Murlog, who is a strong brute of a character with very, very few words. But regardless, Chapter 1, the campaign starts off in a city called Sandpoint. Now, Sandpoint is a city that is on the coast, and it is a huge, sprawling city with a very busy, high-functioning harbor. Its general ins and outs are, it's mostly a fishing town, if you will. Beautiful city, huge, encased in giant concrete brick walls, sprawling, very regal. There's not really a slum of the city, I guess, as you would say it. And high in the center of the city, raising almost, it seems, to the clouds, is the king's castle. Inside, of course, is the ruling class and ruling party. Now, of course, Sandpoint is not without its problems. Otherwise, our heroes wouldn't have anything to do. In fact, Sandpoint has a very dark past. You see, their temple, many years ago, was desecrated by a rune lord, Karzog, and it was desecrated at the hands of one of his demon subservients. Now, the demon itself was beaten back by a group of adventurers almost 50 years ago, but the temple itself was completely desecrated with the dark magic, as since Sandpoint has reinvigorated the temple and are ready to resume their worship to their gods above. And this is where our story begins. So, for 50 years, the faithful of Sandpoint have attended church and temporary structures erected after fire, brimstone, and demons destroyed the previous temple. And while their new religious leader was helpful, kind, and wise, church wasn't the same. Now the new cathedral is finally done. All that remains is for the Swallowtail Festival to renew the site's blessings from the gods and be as if the Sandpoint atrocities had never occurred. So the campaign opens up. Sandpoint is just aflutter with all kinds of merchants and streamers and flags hidden or hung from building to building, children running in the streets, they fill with laughter and joy. Everyone is sharing in merriment and mead, and generally having a good time. Our four heroes were brought to this festival through different backgrounds and different stories that we may share someday, but today is their story as a whole. Our four heroes share in a tavern, just sitting around, having some fun. Rin the druid petting her beautiful 600-pound jet black panther, Souchet in the corner, piping a tune on her panpipes. The rogue Lobre trying to hustle some patrons out of some free money in her mind with a game of minds and wit. The cleric standing in the corner, feeling off-putted, believing he's above other, but of course will never pass up a free drink. And of course, Malag the barbarian, standing arms crossed, but of course, drink in hand. The tavern is bustling with the sounds of patrons and drunkards having their absolute fill of joy. Loud music plays above the rest as the bards sing their tunes and play their lutes. Drink orders are shouted across the bar, and of course everyone is having a good time with coin and drink flying faster almost than the eye can see, when suddenly tragedy strikes. There's an explosion heard outside. Confusion suddenly runs the streets, and you can see the faint glow of fire burning through the windows. Of course, some of the patrons, including our four heroes, ride into the streets. What could have happened? Maybe we can help. As the four heroes ride into the streets, they realize that the explosion was caused by a goblin alchemist blowing a hole through the wall as goblins pour into the city, ransacking and killing anyone they find. Of course, this will not stand. Our four heroes spring into action. The tavern, which lays on the eastern side of the city, is closest to the current the hole blown in the wall, so the heroes decide to move there first and encounter their first group of goblins. 5 goblins in total, none of them equipped with much more than small daggers and leather armor, but as they run amok, causing their chaos and their bloodshed, they of course have the goblin chant. Goblins chew and goblins bite. Goblins cut and goblins fight. Stab the dog and cut the horse. Goblins eat and take by force. Goblins race and goblins jump. Goblins slash and goblins bump. Burn the skin and mash the head. A goblin's here and you be dead. Chase the baby, catch the pup. Bonk the head to shed it up. Bones be cracked, flesh be stewed. We be goblins and you be food. The goblins attack without mercy, and even going as far as to attack Lord Foxglove. Now, Lord Foxglove is just one of the many lords of the city, 3 to be in fact, and he was tasked today with anointing and renewing the temple, the head of celebration, the almost king of the party planning committee, if you would say so, viciously attacked by the goblins and left for dead in the middle of the street. By the time the party reaches them, of course, they spring into action. Murloc, the barbarian, raises his great claymore high into the air and brings it down, slicing a goblin into two. Wynne, of course, commands Suchet, and she strikes out as a black blur shoots across the battlefield, tackling one of the goblins to the ground as she sinks his teeth into him. As Rin begins to cast a healing spell in an attempt to help save Foxglove's life. The rogue, Allure, decides to notch 2 arrows into her bow and draw them back with all the force she can muster, letting them fly, hitting one of the goblins so hard that he is knocked off his feet and thrown back almost 3 yards. And of course, Teshrin, the cleric, with a smile on his face, brings down holy fire from the heavens above, scorching the remaining goblins to bone. The party attempts to recover, of course, healing Foxglove and attempting to save as many as they can. As more and more goblins pour into the city, they are cut down by our heroes, when suddenly a pure white goblin comes riding in on the back of a direwolf. This leader barks some orders in their native and primitive tongue, and more goblins than ever suddenly attack the party. They're hacking, slashing with blades of flurry, claws and teeth shredding apart, and spells being flung from the druid and the cleric, with wind entangling some of them into just the most obtuse roots from the ground, as if they have life of their own, springing from the very bricks themselves, grasping around the goblins' feet so that they can't move. With Murloc very short to follow, bringing the claymore down on as many goblin heads as he can, Allure decides to forego her bow and brings out her dual daggers, darting in between the crevices of the battlefield, trying to find any small opening, any small chink in their armor, small weakness that she can find, and exploiting it immediately with a swift stab of her daggers. And of course the cleric, Teshrin, singing spells of great fire called down from his deity, Solrene, the goddess of healing and flame. They reach the final goal. The leader sitting on his disgusting mount. Now, the goblin, of course, has no name, but the heroes nonetheless spring in action. They attack him and the 4 honor guard with him in the battle. Oh, let me tell you, it is great. You see, being within the realm and deity of fire, the cleric knows burning hands. So Teshrin, after muttering the mystical incantations, releases fire from his very hands, burning 2 goblins severely in front of him, bringing one to its knees and killing the other instantly. Allure jumps behind the leader in the chaos and is able to deliver a quick dagger into the hindquarters of his mount, causing him to shake the leader violently back and forth, throwing off his combat prowess, of course. Wynne commands Suchet to make sure that the goblin that did survive the fire blast in the first place is swiftly dealt with a powerful claw slash from that of a 600-pound panther, and of course Murloc, who is quickly dispatching the remaining 2 goblins in a quick 1v2 combat. Now, other than Murloc dealing with the 2 goblins, of course all that remains is the leader. Murloc, having just finished his 2 goblins, charges at the leader, intimidating his bestial mount, who stands in place in fear. Lynne raises her hand up and, through some very clever elven druid magic, summons ice into her own hand and pushes it forward. It freezes the goblin's arm. Murloc, with a powerful blow from his claymore, brings it into the side of the goblin, shattering his arm. Elissa brings in the 2 daggers and delivers one to each kidney of the goblin, bringing him straight to the throes of death. As the goblin slumps off his mount and the dire wolf runs back into the woods, they approach the goblin, attempting to interrogate him for any information he may provide. The goblin admits that while the barbarian is an absolute terrifying force, he knows nothing. He was hired by an unknown woman to simply raid the town with promises of riches beyond their absolute comprehension, and of course, goblins being nasty little things regardless, they chose to do it anyway. Realizing that he would not give them any more information, the barbarian, who is of course a dragon totem, raises his great totem in front of him and shouts the command word as pure ice flows from the totem's mouth, freezing the goblin instantly, and one swift boot to the face renders the goblin obsolete. Now, what the players did not know at this point is that in the chaos, Lord Foxglove's manor was attacked by humans, and his daughter is missing. So after dispatching with the goblin leader and continuing to help as many as they can, putting out fires and helping righting the sinking ship, so to speak, with Wynne and Teshrin, saving as many as they can with the healing magic they have, and Elissa and Murloc helping rebuild what broken structures they can and saving people from fallen debris, they finally approach the triage infirmary. Upon arrival, they find Lord Foxglove, even with the healing spells, while he did live through his injuries, is still in very worse shape. It is at that point that Sheriff Hemlock rides up with 2 royal guards in tow and states that large plumes of black smoke rise from the direction of his manor. Lord Foxglove admits and begs the heroes, please go to my manor. I care not for my riches or my money inside, but my daughter was left home sick today. Please make sure she is alright. At this point, the players are given a choice. They could either go to the manor and figure out what is happening there, or they could go to the encampment that the goblin leader pointed out, and either slaughter the rest of them or attempt to find out who performed the attack on the city in the first place. They do choose to actually go to the manor. When they arrive, the manor is on fire. The entire left half of the building has already basically burned beyond repair. course, is still greatly in tune with nature, and performs a swift spell to create a localized rainstorm to put out the fires in that building. The players enter the front door to immediately run into 4 human bandits. They are not equipped with much more than daggers and short swords. The players, of course, do not hesitate, as nor do the bandits. Blades meet in battle, as again powerful spells of acid and flame, and even lightning, wrench from the druid's hands, as she continues to master and manipulate her powers of elemental force, while attempting to aid and buff her allies in any way she can. And of course the cleric, wringing out divine justice to those he believes deserve it. At this point, there are 4 bandits inside the main area. The 2 on the ground are quickly dealt with the spells from the spellcasters. Murloc charges up the stairs of the main foyer on the right side to meet the 3rd in battle, and Suchet, with the speed and agility that you could not imagine, charges up the other to meet the 4th. Suchet, the panther, quickly brings her foe to the ground, who is followed by Lore with a quick blade to the neck, finishing off the assailant, and Murloc happily tosses his opponent from the 2nd story, watching him as he lands and then lays limp on the ground below him. They realize, however, that the bandits are all wearing the same armband. A strange sun, or almost saw rune, drawing on all of their armbands. The players think this is weird, but they have a mission, and they must continue forward. They're presented an option to either continue forth into the kitchen, or to go up to the right, or down to the right, as the left side of the building has been burned. They choose the upper left first. As the players move through rooms, they do come across a few other singular bandits trying to ransack the place for whatever may be left, and of course they are quickly dealt with. When they come across, finally, Lord Foxglove's daughter, Keitra Foxglove. She is chained to a bedpost. She looks worse for wear, beaten, and is guarded by 2 regular bandits, and of course 2 in full plate armor. This is the first battle that will finally test our hero's might. Murloc charges mercilessly at the first one, knocking him to the ground with the force of his 300 pounds of muscle, easily bringing the man off his feet. Allure notches a bow and tries to find notches an arrow and tries to find a weak point in the 2nd knight's armor. She unfortunately misses, but she will fire again. The 2 spellcasters are enthralled with getting Keitra out of her chains and away from these men. The cleric uses burning hands at point-blank range to literally burn the face off of one of the bandits, while Wynne 6 Suchet onto the 4th regular bandit. Wynne rushes over to Keitra and, using some heat metal, melts the chains off of the poor girl's arms, at which point she quickly ushers her out of the room as the combat ensues. Suchet the Panther simply, and quite frankly, rips her opponents to shred with ease, and the main bandit that Teshran the cleric is fighting never recovers. All that remains are the 2 knights. Murloc the Barbarian uses his totem again to freeze one completely in his armor, which then, when in a quick decision, chooses to use heat metal on the frozen knight's armor in what I decided to be a quite quick and clever decision. This causes the knight's armor to rapidly contract, which allows for a quick flick of the wrist and deadly slice of the blade from a lower A to quickly deal with knight number 1. Knight number 2 remains. Now at this point, this was a fight that the players sort of struggled through, as the spellcasters were out of spells that they could possibly use, and this was mostly martial combat, but in a situation of 5, including the Panther versus 1, this enemy was still quickly dealt with. The players decide that Wynne will become the guardian protector of Keetra, as they want to continue to explore the manor. They go downstairs into the right lower room, right lower corridor, and it opens into a massive bell tower. At the bottom of the bell tower is a throne with a few pews sitting in front of it. Leading to the throne are 4 skeletons, and behind the throne the players can spot a chest glowing with blue magic. The players decide that we want that chest, of course, and so they move forward to attack the first skeleton, and they prepare for a great fight. And they kill the skeleton in one shot. They move on to the second one, and kill that one in one shot as well. But the first one respawns and turns to attack them. They turn and kill the first one again, at which point the second one respawns to attack them. The players quickly deduce that while the skeletons will die in one hit no matter the amount of damage, they will also respawn on the next DM's turn. So, as the 3 players of Murloc the Barbarian, Wynne the Druid, and Deshron the Cleric distract the remaining 4 skeletons by also, of course, sicking Suchet the Panther on one, Lori the Rogue makes a mad dash for the chest. She makes a successful lockpick roll, at which point, once the chest is opened, the magical seal is broken and all 4 skeletons drop simply to bones. The players find a few useful items, some health potions, a potion of cure disease, and a single magical weapon, in which it is a hammer that works a lot like Thor's Mjolnir. You may throw the hammer and knock an opponent down, but the hammer will replace itself in your inventory upon a long rest, almost as if a lightning strike. You throw the hammer, it disintegrates and reappears the next day. The players are happy with this and choose to move back up to the main foyer after exploring the rest of the room and finding nothing there. They continue through the doors to enter into the kitchen and dining areas. They are greeted with a massive dining hall, stones and torches, built of pure stone with torches lining along the walls, and 2 massive wooden chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. They're greeted by 2 long tables and 1 round lord's table. Due to the nature of what existed in this room and their rather joyous celebration, the players remain temporarily unseen. They notice that sitting along either side of the tables, the long tables of course, are a gaggle of orcs and goblins, viciously tearing into the food that was clearly not prepared for them. And sitting at the table, leisurely and almost in a bored state, twirling his wine cup, sits a human wizard. Now the wizard is covered in simple mage clothing, just a simple robe and sash. However, the magic that he twiddles between his fingers matches the magic on the chest. The players deduce that the wizard locked the items in the chest until a point in which they could be ransacked by someone with more, we'll just say brains and tact than a bunch of goblins and orcs. The players decide how to best attack this and choose to pull back. Now at this point, they are out of spells as they have not rested yet, but again, these players are new, and in the interest of keeping the story moving forward and keeping the players engaged, I just simply reset their spell slots as if they had long rested, because again, 3 of the 4 players have never played a tabletop at all, and the 4th one, we'll just say it's been some time. So I reset their spell slots and told them that everyone is healed to full, just to allow them to prepare for this combat. I was very interested to see how the players would tackle this first large encounter, because there was a total of 7 goblins, 2 orcs, and of course the human wizard himself. The players devise a plan that I actually found to be not only quite effective, but quite clever. When decide, now the players roll for initiative, but as the DM, I allow something called foregoing initiative. Now if you forego initiative, you are moved to the back of the line to go even behind any monsters or players. You become last in initiative. Now, the rolls were as the cleric rolled a 19, the druid rolled a 17, the rogue rolled a 14, the barbarian rolled a 9, and the monsters I just had last for multiple reasons. One, that's a total of 10 enemies to roll initiative for, as well as, again, these players are new, so I try to cut them in the advantage I can, this being one of them, where I always make the monsters go last in this first portion of the campaign. Now we are actually on the second portion already, so hopefully you like the episode, and you stay tuned, because we are much further in the campaign than we are now. So, the cleric is up first, and he chooses to forego his turn, forego his initiative, allowing him to move absolutely last. Now the players devise their plan and execute it, and of course it all goes off without an absolute hitch. The players all roll extremely well for their attacks and for damage. Now, while the players were devising their plan, the druid informed me, which of course, Shannon is the druid, she informed me that she sends her panther to quietly climb up into the rafters and waits for further instruction. Now, panthers in Pathfinder have a signature ability called Pounce. What Pounce will do is quite literally what it sounds like. They can jump from a great distance or height and land on a target, and if the character that they land on fails their saving throw, that character is knocked to the ground. So she sends Shay the panther up into the rafters, and quick combat quickly begins. Ren the druid decides to open combat with a shattering earth spell in which she pulls the very rubble and stones directly out of the floor, flinging them into the dining hall. These rocks, weighing 50 to 80 pounds, deal massive damage to any target that they do actually hit, and she easily dispatches of 2 of the goblins, as they not only failed their saving throws, but she rolled maximum damage. Both of them are instantly killed as rocks crush their heads into nothing but moldy paste, and the rest of the table is heavily damaged. Now the way the room is lined up, if you can imagine almost a box like this. Okay, so the entrance that the players are standing in is down here. The table that, when attacked, comes up this way. The second table comes across, and the Lord's table is right here. And this is just like this here is just like a dancing area. So it's a long table, sorry, I'm doing this backwards. Long table, Lord's table. So she attacks this table with her earth spell. This, again, instantly kills 2 goblins, heavily damaging the rest, and even manages to clip one of the orcs sitting at the far table. This is quickly followed up with Allure the rogue diving in and unleashing an absolute flurry of arrows, burrowing 2 of them deeply into the chest of another goblin sitting at the table, instantly killing it. Murloc the barbarian charges in and goes directly for the orc's table. He smashes into one, flipping it over the table with great force and strength, and brings his cleaver across to cleave the other in 2. Now, because all of the enemies were caught unaware, I considered them to be flat-footed and defenseless. So, Murloc the Barbarian rolls maximum damage and even gets a nat 20 crit, instantly taking the orc's head off. At this point, because Teshron, the cleric, decided to forgo his initiative, it was the monsters' turns. Of course, the monsters had to scramble for weapons as they were completely unprepared, and the only one able to do anything this turn was the wizard. He stands up and begins to cast a channeling spell. As the orcs and goblins rush to their weapons and shields in an attempt to set up some sort of defense for the party, against the party. Initiative rolls back around, and it is Wynne again. Wynne notches an arrow into her longbow and unleashes it, burrowing deep into one of the orc's shoulders, not dealing a ton of damage, but enough. It moves on to Allure, the rogue, who charges heedlessly into combat. Now, one of the things here that I do love to do is what is lovingly referred to as the rule of cool. So Allure charged into combat against 2 goblins, and due to some funky rolls from her for a dex check, I don't have the reason cited here why she had to make one. She failed the dex check, so she instead tries to use Nimble, her ancestry feat, which allows her, of course, to be nimble, and makes the argument that acrobatics should be included into her nimble roll, which I think, honestly, for a first session player, I think this is absolutely genius, so I let her get away with it. She rolls, of course, a nat 20, so I state that as Allure stumbles for the dex check that I can't remember, I think she was dodging an attack of opportunity of some sort. As she rolls over the table, she grabs a dinner knife and burrows it into the eyes of one of the remaining 2 goblins, instantly killing the target. And then we move on to Murloc, who decides to lock himself into hand-to-hand combat with the remaining orc. He makes a very hard swing at the orc after raging, and he rolls very, very high on his attack, and makes the argument that his absolutely massive stat dump into strength of plus 18, of 18, granting him a total of plus 4, he knocks the target hard enough that he knocks his shield away. At this point, we roll back to the monsters. The remaining goblin takes a wild swing at Allure for a small amount of damage, and the wizard gets ready to cast his spell. Now this, again, was very clever by first session players, but if you remember, before combat even started, when the druid set her panther sujet up into the rafters. So Wynne calls Sujet down to pounce on the wizard, canceling his spellcasting. Now this happens right before the DM's turn. So, of course, because he is bounced to the ground and he fails his dex check, he fails his saving throw, the wizard's spell is easily cancelled. And he must start channeling over again the next turn if he wants to. At this point, it is Deshron's turn, and he just simply heals the barbarian. We move back around to win the druid. She quickly dispatches of the remaining goblin with another arrow, at which point a lower ray uses an ability I granted her, which I granted to all of them, special unique abilities to kind of give them an edge in combat, because again, these are first time players, and I wanted them to struggle, but not ever really run the risk of a TPK or total player kill, of course, very early into the campaign. So she uses Vanish to go back into stealth to perform another sneak attack, but this does take her turn. Murloc finishes off the other orc that he was fighting and turns and charges towards the wizard. The wizard casts shield on himself to shield himself away from any possible magical damage that may come from the spellcasters, much to the frustration of Deshron the cleric, who just simply swings at him with his scimitar. This is a very long, Lucy is exploring and causing a lot of noise. Sorry, y'all. So, this is a very, very long fight with spells being slung and blades clashing together. And through great perseverance and a little bit of luck on the dice, the players finally fell the wizard. At this point, I closed the session of the campaign and gave them some pretty epic loot, if I do say so myself, with the barbarian getting a +2 to his strength permanently, an amulet of +2 strength permanently, and some DMs, if you have DM, are going to watch this and cry at how powerful I am making my players. But again, first timers, I thought, why not? Let's just go big and have fun. And of course, I'm adjusting stats to make up for it on the monsters. Because this fight, the fight with the wizard did take a total of 37 turns for them to finish him off. So it was a very long, grueling fight. But the barbarian ends up with a +2 strength amulet. And I have just a random magic item generator thing on my phone, and I just hit random and gave him whatever I got. Okay, so again, +2 strength amulet. The druid gains 2 hellfire potions. You know, drop them on the ground and they create a burning patch of fire that lasts for 3 rounds. The cleric gets a special divine shield that glows when he's around undead, and he can bash the target, and if it is in its glowing state, so if the target is undead, it deals a bonus 1d6 crushing 1d4 fire damage, because, again, I just want to make my players powerful, and I think it's fun. And then this one I kind of regret a little bit, and I've talked to Shannon about how I could I'm sorry, Lucy is exploring and making a lot of noise. Okay, this one I do regret. This one was called the Scythe of the Executioner, and I just gave it to the rogue without fully looking at its total guess you could say. And the scythe itself is only 1d6 damage. Nothing too bad. However, once per long rest, which I actually nerfed this item again and said that the Allure can only use it once per session, it deals a bonus of 6d6 damage. And if the target is killed by the Scythe of the Executioner, this effect resets. I did not tell the player that part, just the 1d6, or the 6d6 plus the 1d6 roll. So this weapon does a lot of damage, which has some fun implications in our next session, and I do hope you tune in for that, and that you enjoyed this episode. Let me know how you feel about this, and if you are interested in where the party continued from here. Thanks guys, and have a good night.